Hi everyone, I'm Cheryl and welcome to the Sewing Room channel. And this is your tip of the week, and it's all about buttons and buttonholes. Different types of buttons, type of buttonholes to use, and what presser foot do you use. And I love my buttons. This is just a teeny weeny part of my button collection. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to go over how to read the information on pattern pieces that you purchase. For instance, this is a McCall's pattern. It's a little girl's top, and there's a button on each shoulder. To find out the button information, such as size and style that you need, what you would do is turn the envelope on the back, check the notions section for that information. And over here where you see the X, all of that information is in here. So for this little girl's top, you need 2 buttons, 3/4 of an inch in diameter. When you make a garment, the buttonhole and stitching on the buttons is always the last step that you do. Here is the instruction sheet here. If you need help on how to read a pattern, click on the link in the upper right hand corner, because if you've never read a pattern before, it definitely has its own language, and I break down all of the terms for you. When looking at your pattern pieces, there are a variety of symbols, and remember, I go over all of these symbols in that video I recommended that you watch. Here, you'll see all of these lines here. What it is that the pattern companies used to just print one size per pattern envelope, and you would look for the envelope that had your size. Well, because they want to cut back on costs, they put all of the sizes on the same pattern piece, and you have to know which line to use. And that goes for all of the symbols that you see here. So that's why it's important you learn how to read a pattern. This is the button symbol. This is where you put your buttonhole on. So you can see there's all of these different symbols, and you look for the one that is the size you are trying to make. On the other pattern piece are X's. This indicates where you are to stitch the button on. And again, look for the size of the garment you are making. So when you look for the buttonhole symbol and the buttons symbol itself to stitch on, you could use a fabric marker to mark on the front side or right side of your fabric. So in order to match your pieces up, you'll notice that one pattern piece has the markings for the buttonholes, and the other pattern piece has it with the markings for the X's on it. So you want to make sure when you mark your fabric with these symbols that everything is lined up. Here are a variety of button styles and sizes. The buttons in this top row here have a little loop on the back, and it's through this loophole that you use your needle and thread to stitch it onto your fabric. Often you'll see these on suits, heavier jackets. Then you have your other style of buttons where you'll either have 2 holes or 4 holes. The large buttons here you typically see on coats, overcoats, things like that. The smaller ones you'll typically see on shirts and blouses. The placement of the buttonhole depends on the garment you are making, so always refer to pattern instructions for proper placement. So there is a vertical placement, which you will see on coats and double-breasted suits, and then on most shirts and blouses you will see a vertical. So this one is going left to right, and this is going top to bottom. So the actual placement of the buttonhole depends on the size of the button you are using. So typically you want the edge of the button to be 1/2 inch away from the finished edge of your garment. So this would be the finished edge. Here's the edge of the button. But then you want to measure from the edge to the middle, or half the distance or diameter of the button. So let me show you this. So here you've measured 1/2 inch, add to that half of the diameter or center of the button, and that's where you would actually place the buttonhole. When constructing a garment, oftentimes the pattern will call for interfacing to be placed in between your fabrics. So on the garment, you're going to have fabric that's called facing, or you could also refer to it as a little lining piece that's hidden. You don't see it from the outside. Then you would place your interfacing, and your pattern instructions will tell you the weight. And again, you would refer to the back of your pattern envelope. This is a lightweight interfacing. Then, of course, you would have your fabric for the outside. The interfacing adds strength to the fabric because when you are buttoning and unbuttoning your shirt or blouse, you're putting stress on that fabric and you don't want it to tear. Here are the presser feet that I am using to complete this. This one is used for making the buttonhole, and this one is used for stitching the button on. Refer to your user's manual for the proper presser feet to use. These presser feet are from my Baby Lock Crescendo. On this presser foot right here is where you would insert your button. So you open this part up, place the button on there, and close this back up. And then here is the bar that the shank of your presser foot holder goes on. It snaps right on there. When you go to stitch the button on, it goes in this one and it slides underneath this white plastic area. And I'll give you more details when we go to the sewing machine. This is the computer screen of my Baby Lock Crescendo, and these are all of the different buttonhole stitches that I have. When I select one, the symbol changes over here. So if I select another one, you'll notice that the symbol is different. So it's always going to look a little different depending on the buttonhole stitch. I'm going to be using this one. Up here it tells me what presser foot I need to use, and up here it shows the needle position. I've selected a buttonhole stitch and I place my buttonhole foot, presser foot on. I've got the button in the back. Before I can stitch, I need to pull this lever down right here. Then I just start stitching. And it will just automatically do everything. All you need to do is step on the presser foot. It'll slow down when it's almost done, and then all you need to do is cut your thread, and then you are done. And there is your buttonhole. Take your seam ripper and start at one end and just poke it through your fabric. Then hold your fabric firmly and just glide it along, cutting the threads. And there is your buttonhole. Before you use your seam ripper to open the buttonhole up, you could, on the back side of the buttonhole, use a product made by Dritz that's called Fray Check. So just use a small drop and spread it along the back and read package instructions for drying time. And this helps any unraveling that may or may not occur on your fabric. After making your buttonholes, here's how you would mark your fabric for the placement of the buttons. So here is the fabric that goes underneath the buttonhole, so overlap it. Now for a horizontal buttonhole, this one here, you would pull the fabric over until the edge of this buttonhole is up against this fabric here. So it would be right up against this. Then go to this end of the buttonhole, and I just push my pencil or a fabric marker right in there and make a mark. And then for a vertical placing button, or buttonhole I should say, you would place your button in the center like this. And then when the edge of the button over here comes against the edge of the back fabric right here, then you would go to the center of the buttonhole and put a mark. So when I pull these apart, you see that the vertical buttonhole, the button is actually closer to the edge over here, and for the horizontal placing buttonhole, it's actually a little farther in. And the reason why this one needs to be over farther is I'm going to place this back on top so that when the button is coming through here, this is going to be open just slightly. And you don't want to see some other color of fabric other than what's on the outside there. Whereas if it was over here, right up against the edge here, if the buttonhole was just slightly open on that end, you could either see your skin or whatever you're wearing underneath. Now I'm going to show you the stitch that you use to actually sew your button on. So I'm going to go to the next screen, and this symbol with a round circle with a little dash line in it, that's the stitch that I need to use. So it appears right here, and then it also tells me I need to change my presser foot. I have my presser foot on to sew the button on, and I'm slipping it inside like that. Then line up your buttonholes to go exactly where the needle is at, and the needle is going to go side to side. Then once you've got it placed, lower the presser foot down and begin stitching. And cut your thread, and you're all done. Here is a suggestion I have. Whenever I've tried something new and I've done a stitch that I don't do all of the time, I like to make a sample here. So this is a buttonhole that's a wide buttonhole, and this one is a narrower buttonhole. So I used this thick button for this wide buttonhole and this thin button for this narrower buttonhole. I wrote down the stitch number that I used, and then I wrote down the foot, the presser foot, that is used to put buttons and making the buttonhole with. Here is some general information on how I recommend you stitch a button on. So here's a button that's got 2 holes in the top. So you could use this method for whether it's a 2-hole button or a 4-hole button. I know my button in the little thread here looks like a space alien, but it's really a button with thread. So here's your button. Here's some thread. Here is, you could either use a toothpick, a pin, or a needle to place either on top of the button, or you could even place it underneath. Here is your fabric layer right here. When you are stitching the button on, you want to use thread, and you want to put it through your needle, bring both ends together, and tie a knot. You would start underneath the fabric, so here is the knot. You would go up through the hole of the button, come across, go over to the other hole, and down. Then you would go across again and keep doing this, and I recommend you do it maybe 4 times, and then stay in place with your needle and thread and go in the same place a couple of times to tie it off. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I've taken some of the confusion out of making buttonholes and different types of buttons to use and what presser foot to use. That's very confusing. Always remember to go to your user's manual so you know what presser foot to use for different types of stitches on your sewing machine. Now, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and check out my Facebook page. And if you're interested in beginner sewing projects, check below your YouTube screen for those video links. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing. If you like the Sewing Room channel, one of the best ways to show your support is to subscribe by clicking on that red subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to click on share to share this video with your friends. And make sure you click on the bell so you receive notifications for all my new videos. I'm Cheryl, this is Manny, and this is Scotty. See you next time.